Here's a theme that, though, it's interesting. Your firewall of the future is identity, and your identity will give you speed. What do I mean by that? If we deploy identity correctly, which was hybrid environments, securing the perimeter-less environment. And I'm going to give a little case study here. This is actually a really interesting case study. It's not so much a case study. I didn't write it as a case study, but I'm going to give you the story. It's a local company. It's about 400 people worldwide. And we've been working with this organization. The CIO is very interesting, very strategic, focused, and he had Ernst Young, EY, move their whole infrastructure into the cloud. Well, I mean, anybody can afford EY, but EY, spending money with EY to do anything is, they're certainly not afraid of spending money. But they're in the cloud now, and he's like, he has an RSA project for single sign-on and multi-factor authentication. And I'm going to be product agnostic. I don't care if you're using Okta, Duo, RSA, Microsoft Core, MFA. To us, it's the same thing, meaning that the core fundamentals have to be in place for it to work. So he came and he said, this RSA was deployed as a test, then rolled into production, just like boom, boom. So essentially the RSA had domain controllers who were at headquarters. So he's like, well, this doesn't really support my cloud infrastructure. I've got a primary source of authentication at HQ. I've got Azure possibility. I've got a colocation facility. I got 365. I've got my line of business WorkDay. I've got Unily, another major application. How do I bridge this all together so that I can extend my identity into the cloud and have just as much of assurance that if I had behind the firewall? It's a really good question. Can't go down. He doesn't have a staff to support 24/7. He says, I don't want it going down. So our thought is, well, if you don't want it to go down, let's design HA into it so it doesn't go down. Not let's throw resources of, yes, we'll watch it 24/7. Let's actually design HA into the system so it won't go down. There was staff expertise issues. He was concerned that CEO or someone would lose their phone. What do we do then? How do we get them access into the system? I already mentioned that. Are the production systems going to be on-prem or off-prem? That was a concern. Security drift. Who's going behind to make sure that you deprovision? Someone talked about deprovisioning and provisioning users. Now HR is getting involved. So it's funny, back in 2005 when I got into the identity business, I would go to these Burton Group conferences, which were great in identity. It was the old PKI, and only big companies did SSO back then. And we talked about deprovisioning and provisioning and linking IT with HR, and HR being able to click a button and not needing to call IT. Just click a button, and so this person no longer exists. They've been escorted out. Versus that person leaves the organization, goes home, has access to the cloud infrastructure, which then gives them access to everything until somehow HR gets around to letting IT know they've left. So that's a process piece which has a big impact, but he was concerned about auditing security drift. He had a caching problem and timeout settings. He had got this environment stood up, but he had these timeout settings that were related to Active Directory, not to his RSA. He had caching problems on the local browsers. People would go to hotels and log out of the system. Two of the apps he could set timeouts on a couple he couldn't, and it was really concerning him. Those settings have to be set within AD. And so he wanted a team to go behind the infrastructure and do really a proactive monitoring and assessment to prevent drift of this, because it's so important to him. And the reason I say speed, if you get this right, then new business can add line of business applications relatively quickly, and you have a model that you can deploy into. And so, and he had multi-data centers. So he had lots of data centers that he was straddled. He was in a hybrid world. It was colocation, partially on-prem, partially Azure, and partially 365. But on a mission to solve this problem. So securing the front door. I like this slide because it moves, but I also think it really is, if you have a privileged user, if the credentials are found in public, if they're accessing sensitive app, if they're on an unmanaged device, if the malware is detected, if IP address detected as a botnet, if they're in an impossible travel situation, if the CEO is in Washington, D.C. at 4 o'clock and all of a sudden shows up at 4:29 in Russia, that's an impossible travel situation. Can we just block that? And anonymous clients. can we identify user risk and apply a condition to this, a session risk and a user risk, so we can either checkbox allow access, require multi-factor, force a password reset, deny access, or limit access. So that's why I do believe that this is the holy grail, is really tackling identity from a Microsoft perspective. Microsoft's controlling identity. Now, I don't care which product you're using, they're authoritative for identity. All the others are just inheriting that, whatever product you use. So we have to dominate identity, and the other products sit on it. And I know products are sucking AD privilege, they're sucking the AD credentials out, and they're doing all this stuff. But at the end of the day, you got to get AD right, and then they can suck correctly. It's like garbage in, garbage out. So getting a really strong, healthy AD platform is a big thesis for us.